was also the only organization in Iowa to register support for a bill that would rewrite a 2010 constitutional amendment passed with 63% of the vote to raise about $200 million a year in new sales taxes for improving water quality.
Hello, my name is Michael Skolis, and again, I am talking about my art and fun stuff. In November, I went on a trip to the Salton Sea, which is like this really interesting place where you're seeing ecological collapse while also just this massive profiteering from energy companies, because the Salton Sea rests on this geothermal fault line. And it's kind of this like hot spring for geothermal energy within the Western United States, one of the few places that is easily accessible and the land is cheap. So what I am getting into here is kind of this in situ project. Like, I don't want this to be a narrative. I don't want this to be anything super laid out. It's just like, what was I thinking while I was on these trips? And what are some of the photos that came out of it? So let's take a look. Yeah, so look over here, and what do we see? Don't matter. We see these sections of San Gabriel. These are the Chevron oil pumps. They frack in this area, and I was just, driving through. These are shot on infrared, so if we go in here, there is no color information other than red. So the only spectrum of light that shows up on the sensor is red. And I think it's like this really fun may not be the word, but this really interesting way to look at these sites of extraction, because all of them are gated. All of them have CCTV footage. Literally, if you're within, 5 miles, not 5 miles, this is me being paranoid, whatever. But if you're on the premises, they're gonna know you're there, especially with something as condensed as this. So you get these really interesting light flares, but also like a lot more information. You also see images like this, which are these panoramas of the same scene. It's not loading because this is like 12 images merged together, but it's 12 images merged together. So I'll just start from back over here, but you get a lot of information. You also see some of the stars coming through and these light bursts, because the lens that I was using is not made for that. So you get these weird kind of refractions and stuff. But again, the plant life becomes a lot more vibrant. You get a bit more richness in the severity of some of these figures, these fracking machines out in the landscape. And then you also get some of the like highway going by and whatnot, and some of the stuff going on up on the hilltop, which I think is super interesting, how these institutions invade and take over the horizon. Whatever. This one I like a lot. This one I like a lot. Yada yada. Interesting stuff. Whatever. But again, at the heart of this is just like this question of how do we practice counter surveillance on our future? These companies, these corporations use surveillance systems and the landscape as a way to enact their wishes on their property. And that's what they own. And I don't think that we think enough about how we use our time and how we leisure. And the only right of leisure is how we use our time. You can leisure wherever, if you're crazy enough.
The congenitally disaffected
Sutri's spine convulsed in a long, cold shunting of vertebrae. He looked up at the old woman.
So another thing is like, what is lithium? what is this funky looking little metal? What does it do? What is this thing about? I ended up talking to a buddy of mine who's a chemical engineer. He just graduated from Berkeley and is now working in the chip industry. But he worked at Tesla for a little while, and he gave me just like the broad strokes of like, how do these lithium batteries work? What is going on there? And basically it's like electron imbalance allows for energy to go through, but the reason that we need so many like different rare earth metals like cobalt and zinc and copper and whatnot is because you need these steps that allow for a smooth transition of energy. He described it to me as like, you need like literally steps that resist that immediate jolt of energy, so that way you can create a smooth transition that allows for a smooth and efficient distribution of energy and power. And lithium is a great way to store that energy, but you need cobalt and zinc and copper to be able to smoothly regulate it. So that's why we are so high pressed for it. Yeah, this is what a lot of my research is, to be so for real with you guys. This is just what I do all day. I sit back and I relax and I think, and yeah. And this is where it comes from, maybe, sometimes. Sometimes I do it in spite. I don't think it's wrong to use the full human gamut to create art. I forget. I don't know what I'm talking about here. Anyways, so I drove into LA pretty early in the morning, and I was just like really fucking out of it. I slept like for an hour and a half in the parking lot just because I'd been driving through the night. I left at like 10 p.m. after a full day of work, and just like got in kind of late, but you know, whatever. I don't know, it's weird. I had something written down about this. When I think about California and the West especially, a lot of it goes back to these early Western mythologies of it being this great expanse. And I don't think that it's left that. I think it is still expansive, but it's no longer uncomfortable. You know, you sit in a car for, you know, maybe 8-12 hours and it's climate controlled, and maybe you have like 3 things to do over the course of like a 12-hour ride. Like maybe you have to like turn the wheel or look at the map every once in a while, but for the most part it's just like a straight shot. There's not a lot that you need to do. And I think there's a different kind of unease in that. There's a hurry up and wait kind of unease where there's all these things to do and all these places to be, and part of getting there is just being comfortable with not being there. So the night that I got there, I was just like hanging out at one of the beaches, and it was like a really gorgeous sunset and genuinely so surreal to be up against this environmental backdrop that is just like severely degraded, but also so fucking sublime. These aren't photos that I'd ever really include because they feel a little bit Instagram-y, but I do like something like this, because off in the distance, you get these little flickers of something, these little lights dancing on the edge of the horizon. And again, I love stuff playing on the horizon. I think it's just fascinating what deigns to exist above the land, what deigns to pierce the heavens. Yeah. Part of my shooting is like going to some of these weird places. There were some border patrol stops along the way, but like, I don't know, there's no one out there really policing it. I was just out taking photos. I did, while I was out there, have like a serious concern of like, oh my God, am I gonna have like a fucking diseased lung going to this place? Am I just like inhaling chemicals and hydrocarbons and toxic mineral dust from this place, which you likely are. A quality pilot, air quality pilot project, Imperial Irrigation District property. They said do not trespass. I'm not saying that I trespassed, but again, just like really odd spaces, destruction. This was a boat dock earlier on in its life, back in the 50s or something, because this used to be like the playground for LA. People would come to Palm Springs and the Salton Sea to just get out of town and relax and enjoy what once was a really beautiful space. So this was one of the boat docks. And I think it's just like this foreboding ruin of ecological disaster, because this is where the water should be. Yeah. Okay, so these are some of the photos shot on infrared. These are lithium mines. Again, just like interesting spaces, but you also have these wetland marshes. Like, this is how it looked on the camera. You get a little bit of differentiation between the foliage with the infrared, where it comes out a little bit brighter, just because of how the light reacts to chloroplasts and some of the stuff in there. But whatever. But you get this really sensitive, bright image that doesn't highlight the thing off in the distance, that doesn't acknowledge that beast off in the land. So I wanted a way to like draw attention to it, to like break you out of your immediate recognition, which is why I did some of these like inverted images of the landscape. Yeah. One of my favorite photos though from this trip was up here. Yeah, this one. It's of these direct injection pipes for this lithium brine slurry. Part of how they do this like mining is they will send a hot sludge down. It'll get superheated by the active fault line. It'll go back up, and that mineralized water will be used to heat, or that mineralized slurry will be used to heat water that then turns steam and creates energy. That's how it goes. It's all just steam power. But they realized somewhere along the way that this super mineralized slurry has extremely high concentrations of lithium. So they developed some chemical processes to divert some of that slurry to go through a filtration system and refine lithium. And that's what these pipes do. They are part of that superheated slurry that produces energy. Again, where does this exist in the landscape? Like, where do you see this on a daily basis, other than through your phone or through whatever news you're getting? I don't know where else to find this other than in the real world. Like, it's so unreal. And I don't know if I did the best job of depicting it, but I tried my best and I went out there. So that's what I have from the Salton Sea.